Hello, Natroners, and welcome back to another episode of VFX with Natron. So, as you may have noticed, I've moved, or at least I'm in the process of moving. Things are looking a little different. That's because I don't have the old location, and so this is going to be, well, for the time being, this is what we're going to have. Um, right, today we're going to be looking at making a laser-like logo using the Natron logo or variant thereof. Let's take a look at what today's goal is. Today's goal is going to be this. All right. And so let's hop over into Natron and we're going to talk about what do we need first? Well, first of all, obviously we need a font, or we need the actual logo. So what I'm going to do is I'll have this SVG here. You can download it from the link that I provided. And if all we have to do is just drag this in. Now, this is a specialized logo. I believe, let me just pull this up whoops, we'll just go with that. This should hopefully just that didn't actually open up correctly. Well, that's fine. Let's do this instead. Whoop, there we go. I hope. Well, yes, there we go. So here's what it should look like when if you were to open this up in Inkscape. And you can see that the reason I wanted to bring this up is so you can see what it looks like. You can see that the background is actually gray, or it's set to gray. So we can see the fact that there are white lines and there's black bits. And in Natron, when we look at this, obviously, we see that it's solid black. But it's not entirely black, or at least not yet. And so just to prove this, what we're going to do, just because we want to make this transparent ultimately, we're going to just turn on the checkerboard background so we can see the bits and pieces. Anyway, the other thing we want to know over here in Inkscape is that if we pull up the document, if we actually look at the layers, all right, we can see that there are 6 layers. And of the 6 layers, if we go to the, where is it? I think it's this, the XML editor. We can see if we select one of these layers, you can see here that it's not only Inkscape has 2 things. This is I went over this in the past, but it's important for anybody who wants to know how to do this on their own to be able to look at this and see what's going on here and know how to change this. So Inkscape names its layers using its own Inkscape label, which is found right here. It's called NY. We can see it right here, which is this one right here. Okay, and so anyway, if we go to, where was that, in white right there, we can see that it says, so this is this label, this is the layer label. But if we pull this into Natron, Natron won't see this. And so the problem that we face is that we need to get an actual something that Natron will recognize. So inside of Inkscape, you can also have this thing called ID. Now, ID is supposed to be a custom label that is unique to every single path inside of Inkscape or inside of an SVG. In this case, I've named it basically the exact same thing, with the exception that I didn't put a space and I capitalized the W. So that's how it's named here. And there's going to be other paths, because these are obviously layers that I have paths on as opposed to the paths themselves. So with that known and understanding that, and this is how all we have to do to rename it is double click on one of these, read it, type in whatever we want for a name, and then we hit return at the end. And when you return, it will accept that, and if everything went right and it named properly, this should name to whatever you've changed your name to, which hopefully will be the same as your layer name. Except for layer names can be, you can have multiple, in Inkscape, you can have multiple layers name the exact same thing, which is not something you can have happen inside of, or you don't want, you can have in an actual SVG. So, just know that so we're gonna hop over here into Natron. Whoops, wait a minute. No, let's close this. Whoops, close. close without saving, and close this without saving. We don't need it. So here we are. So this is what it looks like here. Right now we're looking at all the layers combined. That's what its default is. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be separating the individual bits and merging them. And the way we're going to, a lot of people are used to using the shuffle node, and there's a lot of people who've talked about it. We're not going to use shuffle node for that purpose. What we're going to actually use, we're just going to go into using card 3D. So I'm going to hit tab and type in card, and then we're going to grab a card 3D, and for some reason it went into input 2, which is fine. We're going to just pop that in like so. And on the card 3D node, there's a few things we need to do. First of all, we're going to be animating this. We're going to set our animation frame range to, or interval to 24 frames. And we're going to, because I live in the US, if you live in Europe or some PAL nation, you can, switch it to 25. Anyway, I'm going to hit, I'm going to go out to set frame 73. This is where I actually want this to end up. This is where our final, once it all comes together, 3 seconds out, basically, whatever interval you want to use, it's 3 seconds out. That's what we're at. I'm going to set this back down to -4, all right, which is going to make it look small in the center of the screen, but that's because ultimately this was designed so that it could do some more than what we're going to be doing today, but I don't want to focus on the other stuff. So we're going to set it to 4. It's going to move into this position, and we're not going to, at this point, resize anything. What we are going to do is set up some keyframes. So we're going to set a key on our translate. We're going to set a key on our rotate for all our dimensions. I'm going to actually pull up my reference over here and make sure that that is set up as well. And for some reason, my Natron over in my reference is all wonked out, but that's okay. And the other thing we want to do is set a key for our scale. So we want our translate, rotate, and scale to be set to, we want the only thing we should change is our Z for our translate to -4, which will look like it shrank down, but it's actually moved it in 3D space. That's what a card 3D does. It moves things in 3D space. It's one of the only things that does. Anyway, been over that before. So the next thing we need to do is we need to pick out which layer we're going to use for the for this bit. So I'm going to just zoom in here a little bit. We're not going to worry about the resolution here. We're going to sit here down here on the output layer. We want to there's this thing called all planes. We want to uncheck that, because by doing that, that reveals our layers in our document. So now it says source layer. All right. If we changed our output layer, it would be pointless. It doesn't do us any good, because that just says, what is this node outputting on? And I don't want it to output on anything other than color RGB. I want the input, however, to be, or the source, to be one of these layers. So we're going to be starting off with the outermost layer. We're going to start off with the outermost layer white. And we're going to select the outer hex white. You can see it has outer hex white, outer hex black. Well, let's just look through these quickly. Outer hex black. Then we have inner hex white and inner hex black. And then we have the N white and N black. And the other things are just, these are the actual paths that make those up. We could have named those and it would have simplified it, but from the point of editing it inside of Inkscape, it's just easier to keep it layered this way, and it's not hard to track these things down as long as you name your things correctly. But you'll notice these are not named the same as our layers. They're named the same as what our IDs are. These are the IDs of the individual paths or nodes in this case. In this case, the group node is called, which is a layer inside of Inkscape is actually a group node, or a type of a group node. So all right, so we're going to be using the outer hex white for our first thing. And so what are we going to do? We're going to keep this at 4, and we're going to be rotating this. The first thing we want to do is come up with some type of interesting animation. So let's go back to the beginning. Let me see. I want to go to we're going to go to our first frame. And on our first frame, we're going to set the rotation to 90 degrees. All right. Now, let's see what that does. Let's zoom out a little bit, and we're going to just rotate through this so you can see. So the X rotation, as you can see, this rotates it downward. And I'm going to keep it at 64 right now, just so we can see what the other ones do. We're going to do the Y is also going to be 90. All right. Oops, not 990. And we'll just rotate that back a little bit. You can see that rotates it like, it looks like it's rotating it like this, but we're not actually going to be rotating it like this. We're going to be changing our rotation order in a minute. And the last thing we want to do is rotate it on the Z 360 degrees so that it rotates around. All right. So if we rotate it on the Z 360 degrees, that will give us a rotation. It won't look like it has actually moved, but as we step through this, now these aren't the final rotations, mind you. This is just, we're looking at this at 60 just so we can sort of start seeing what it's doing. All right. So we can see how it's rotating here. Now, this is not what we actually want for our final rotation here. And we're not doing any scaling or movement in the Z direction yet. So let's actually change this back to 90. We want the first two to be 90, which is basically, to 90. And that's going to make it so that here, let's just hit play. In fact, let's drop our resolution a little bit because we don't need this to be perfect to watch this. All right, so there we go. That's what it currently looks like. And other than the fact that it's not moving, we want to move this back in space. But there's a couple more things I want to do to this. First of all, I don't like how this rotates. This is rotating. I don't want it to rotate. I don't want it to spin. What we're seeing here is it's spinning on the Z-axis. And in most situations, spinning on the Z-axis is fine. But the problem is the Z-axis is rotating. You'll notice that it does Z, then it rotates the Z first, then it rotates the X, and then it rotates the Y. Well, I don't want it to be that way. I want it so that our whole object, while it's deformed, is doing these funky things. So we're going to change the rotation order. We're going to put Z last. And the way the actual order we're going to do it is we're going to do Y, then we're going to do X, and then we're going to do Z. Okay, so we switch it to Y, X, Z, and you can see that this whole thing shifted around. And now when we hit play, it's a far more interesting animation because the Z is the last thing to get rotated. So it's rotating the other two axes, and then we're seeing the Z rotating basically from our perspective. So the whole thing spins, and it makes it a lot more interesting and a lot more dynamic. We can see it starts off and it looks like it's just rotating in a circle. If we had eliminated the animation on the other axes, it would just look like it was spinning in place like this. Now, there's another thing here, which is towards the end, right in here, it just starts looking too uniform and too perfect. And I don't want it to, for the last second, to look like it is, like this is a perfect octagon or hexagon. Sorry, it's a hexagon, which is six-sided. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit more animation to this. First things first, we're going to go back to the beginning, and we're going to change the scale. We're going to reveal the scale options here, and we're going to set it so that the X on the first frame is going to be 1.5. Okay. And we're going to set the Y to 2. All right, let's take a look at that. And just so we can see what that looks like, I'm going to bring these back down a little bit so we can see. So what that's actually, let's zero these out for now, just so we can see what they look like. So this is what we're actually doing. 1.5. So we can see it's 1.5 times, or the height, I should say, is 2 times, and the width is 1.5 times the width. All right. We don't need to scale the Z because the Z has no depth. But anyway, let's put this back to 90. So we're going to put that to 90, and we're going to put this to 90 as well. And we're going to just hit play again and just watch through this one more time. And we can see that makes it a little more, what that's doing is, as you can see, as it's going through this, it just makes it look like it's not completely uniform in size, like it's still coming back into shape towards the end. There's one other thing that we're going to want to do, and that's going to be back at frame, we're going to do it at frame 55. At frame 55, we are going to change the Y rotation from 22. I just want to make sure I'm on the right frame. No, wait a minute, something's wrong. I don't know. No, that's right. 55. All right, so here we want to change it to 35 for the rotation. All right, and that's just going to keep it a little more rotated at that point. And we're going to go into our curve editor right now and just look at what we just did there. That is going to be our y-axis. So we're going to select the rotation y-axis, fit this. And we can see this right here. This is just what it's going to do, is it's going to make it so that it stays rotated a little bit longer as it passes through this location. And I also want to ease the entire thing this way, just a smidge. And we're also going to take all of these. We're just going to select everything. And we're going to take the last keyframe and we're going to select all those points. We're going to right click. We're going to set it to interpolation horizontal. That's going to allow it to ease in. So it's going to, at the end, it's going to slow down and stop. All right. So let's go back to that Y here. I want to get this so that it looks nice and smooth. This isn't quite smooth enough. I want it to look a little smoother right there. In fact, here's what we'll do. Right, we're going to try and get it so that this point on the where this dark green line is, or the thicker green line is, we're going to just try to have it cross at this, where this intersects. Just try to get it approximately there. And that ought to look pretty darn good. It's not right about there. That's good. All right, doesn't have to be perfect, but good enough. All right, so let's go back and take a look at what that looks like from the beginning. We don't need that. That was an accident. The computer's running a little slow. Let's hit play and look at what that looks like. So that gives us our final animation for that element. All right, so that's that element. Okay, now let's go back to frame 73, which, by the way, this doesn't update. Wish it did. No, if somebody should, everybody should point out that to the developers, that whenever you hit the go to a frame, that this should update anytime you you hit next frame, previous frame. The actual position should show up here. Anyway, it doesn't matter for what we're doing. For right now, we need to keep moving. We're going to put in another card 3D. And we're not going to worry about the black elements yet. We're going to focus on doing the animation of the individual bits. So now this card 3D, the first thing we're going to do is uncheck and set this so that, and I'm not sure if this is hiding behind my face, so I'm going to shrink this. Oh, it will disappear. Let's just, for right now, we're going to set that to none. Which is going to just make it so that the source layer. So I'm going to set the source layer, as we can see here. For this second one, we're going to do this one as the inner hex white. And we're going to just take that. We're going to look at it about here. Then we'll reveal the bits again. And we're going to set we're on frame 73. We're going to set a key on all dimensions. Let me pull up and make sure we get everything right. We want to be there. And we're going to set the Z to, again, -4 for our final position, and everything. Oh yes, and we want to, for this one, instead of doing this, we're going to do the rotation again. Sorry, and then we're going to do the X value for the skew. So let's set a key on the X value for the skew at frame 73. That will set these to 0 so that we know that it's going to return to this position, and this is what it's going to look like when it gets here. So go back to the first frame, and I'll go on my reference and get our values. All right, so what's the first thing we're going to do? The first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to shift this up a little bit. We're going to shift it up a little bit because it's going to make this, we're going to move it up 0.3. The reason for this is it's going to make it look like this whole thing is sort of coming down when we do this rotation. So let's set the rotation X to 90, and you can see. So what X is going to do is, as you can see, it's not here. Well, let's zoom in a little bit. We can see that by having it at 0.3 versus 0, we're no longer looking at it edge on. We're looking at it slightly higher. So it's going to appear slightly above the camera when this is pulled in, or like it's coming from above the camera. All right. So that's why we have it set there. We've moved its position up, and its rotation is set to 90. Now for the skew, what we're going to do, actually let's pull this back to down to 0 for the moment, and we're going to just up the skew. The skew X, what we're going to do is just look at what it does. We can see it pushes it to the side. If we set this to 90, it will also disappear. And the reason is that it's basically perfectly 45 degrees. So we want to have it 45 degrees here, and we want to have this 90 here as well. So we're going to set this back up to 90. There we go. 90 and 90. And so let's take a look. Oh, we want to go and edit our, whoops, not our dope sheet. Oh boy, our whole graph has been, oh well, don't worry about my layout's been screwed up, but it doesn't matter which order these appear in. Anyway, select the points. We're going to select all of them. We just right click, go to let's right click and go to interpolation, set it to horizontal interpolation, and that will make it so it eases at the end. And then we're going to go hit play and just look at what that does. And so we can see it eases at the end. So we go back and watch that again. Nice, easy, simple animation, right? The only thing we haven't done is we haven't animated it. That's interesting. Uh-oh. There's supposed to be an animation on that, I do believe. It shouldn't just... Oh, phoo. I missed a piece. Oh. Uh-oh. I don't think it's supposed to... Oh, fudge. I forget what the value was. I think this is also comes from 0. Well, we'll try it. Let's try pulling this from 0. No, it wasn't 0. Maybe it was. Uh-oh. Whoops. Remove that key. We're not on the first frame. Go back here. I think we want to put that to 3. Let's try that. No, we're going to leave it at 4. Never mind. I guess I'm going to remove that key. I thought I animated it. We're not going to worry. We're going to let it go. This is all good. I just redid it this morning, though, to verify things, and I think I boo-booed. Wait a minute. Am I doing the right one? I just want to make sure I got the right one. All right. Yes, we got the right one. That's the second layer. All right, so now we're going to do our third layer. We're going to hit tab, called 3D, connect up that one. And for this one, what we're going to do, we want to go out again to frame 73, which is our last frame. For this, we're going to select that. Oops, we're going to select this and view it. We're going to set our Z depth to -4. Same as the before, change it from all planes, uncheck it. We're going to set our source layer to N white. All right, and there's our white N. And then what we're going to do for this one, we're going to set a key on the translate. So set a key all dimensions, rotates, set a key all dimensions. And that's where it's going to be. Then we're going to go to frame 1. And we're going to set the Y to 90. Oops, to 90. And so we can see that rotates it this way. Oh yes, there's one other thing we're going to do here. Let's actually zero this out again. There's one other thing here we're going to do. We're going to set the pivot. We're going to change the pivot on the Z to 0.5, and that's going to shift it from dead center off. We're starting off, if we think of this as a 0 to 1, if we move it, the center of this is 0.5. So if I want to move it off to the one side or the other, I have to either move it -5 or -0.5 or +0.5. I want to move it to the right hand side in this case. So I'm going to hit oops, we're not going to hit 0.5. There's already point. We're going to just change that to 0.5. Now, when we set this, when we start rotating this, let's put a second 0 here so we can move it in tens. Wait a minute, was it? Oh, no, it wasn't meant to be, sorry, not 0.5. It should have been -0.5. So -0.5 for the pivot. There we go. And let's look at that. There we go. So now it's spinning off to the side like so. And we can see, so there it is off to the side. And we're going to also then change the Z rotation so that it is also 90. So we'll just put that up to 10 and then rotate that to 90. Whoops, 90. And then, so, all right, we're going to, before we do the Z rotation, which is the last thing we're going to do for this part, we'll just look at what that's looking like. That's basically what the whole motion is going to be, except for we're going to obviously move it in the Z depth. So we want to move this back to 0 so that it's off to the right side. You can see that as it comes towards us, it goes past the right-hand side of the screen. So we go set this to 0, and then when we hit play, we'll see that that just comes in like so. And of course, that's not easing, so we need to go into our curves, which are over here. So hit focus, hit F inside of, oh, wait a minute, my keyboard shortcuts are not showing. Why are those not showing? I swear I had launched that earlier. All right, that's odd. Connect's not working on. I don't know why this has stopped functioning, and I'm not getting my keyboard layout. But I apologize. I don't know why it's not showing up here. It should be Connect's not working. I can't do anything about that at this point. I'll try and fix that for the next time. All right. So anyway. So I'll try and dictate what I'm doing. We're going to select these. So what I did here is I wanted to fit all the curves into the view. So I hit the F key on the keyboard, on my keyboard, and it fit everything. And that will allow everything to be seen. And so then I'm going to select these, the right hand side, and we're going to right click, and we're going to right click somewhere where everybody can see it on the screen. We're going to set it to horizontal interpolation, and that's going to do our easing at the end. All right, so let's go back over to our node graph. Let's take a look at this and hit play, and we can see that's what it looks like. Good. Now we need to merge all of these. So we're going to put a merge node down here. Now we're not going to use B. B is going to be saved. That's going to be used for something else. So we're going to set A to our first node. And then what we're going to do here, we're going to actually clone each one of these primary nodes. All three of these white ones. So whoops, in this case here, which is the outline, the hex outline, we're going to hit Alt K. Okay, which is going to create a clone node. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to connect it up. Okay, I'm going to double click on this clone. And all I'm going to do, I'm not going to change any of the parameters. I'm going to change it from outer hex white to outer hex black. All right, and then I'm going to put that for the moment into A2. All right, and just make sure it's right next door to the other one, like so. It's giving me lip because. All right, so about like that. All right, so then what that's going to do is if we look down here, we can see that now we have a black line, or our black layer is on top of our white layer for our outline. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect A3, input A3 to card 3D2, which does the white line. All right, this is the inner white line. And we're going to clone that. We're going to hit Alt K. And we're going to put that into our source. And all we're going to do for this one, double click on it, change it from inner hex white to inner hex black, like so, and then plug it plug layer 4 into it. Now I'm going to turn off the low res rendering so we can see it all together, and you can sort of see what's happening. We have the white the outer white line, the black line, the inner white, the in between two, which is actually part of the inner line, and then the black line on top of it. All right, so that's what creates that. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect for input number 5. We're going to do the N, and then we're going to clone this. We're going to hit Alt-K, and we're going to grab that and put that into our layers, and we're going to put that into input 6. All right. And oh yes, and we obviously need to set it so that instead of being with the white, we need it to be the black and black. So there we go. So there's our entire logo. Now you're saying to yourself, but it's black with checkerboard behind it. If we turn off the checkerboard, we can see that it's not actually going to be, it's black, but the checkerboard isn't showing through. This is so we can see, analyze the alpha, because we want to analyze the alpha. Now, one of the things that happens in the original video, if people were watching, is that when the N comes over this particular point in time, these two, at this point, the black merges with the black behind it, which means that we have to reorder these things a little bit. So in order to do this, well, this is why we have 6 layers. We're actually going to just play a little bit of rearranging. What we're going to do here is we're going to put little dots below each one of these, like so. And we know that this here is the black, this is the black outline, this is the inner outline. So this one right here needs to come above this white N, all right? So that it is seen, or so that the two blend together. All right. So what that basically means is I just need to shift 2 lines. I'm going to disconnect this right here, which is our white. This is, wait a minute, hold on. Yes, this is our white outline. This is our white, 2 bits of our white outline. All right. Our middle one. We're going to disconnect this. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to disconnect this one from here temporarily. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. I'm going to disconnect this one. I'm going to shift this one over 1. All right. I'm going to shift this one over 1. And then I'm going to take this one and shift it back to that position. And what that has done is now the 3rd layer is this white. Then above or behind that is this and this. Okay, that makes sense. All right. So what's happening is that there are 2 white layer. We have this white layer, this black layer, this white layer, this. All right, and we can see that this is going down here. All right, it's basically the equivalent of shifting those 2 over. All right, actually, it's the equivalent of, let's just rearrange this so that it looks better. If we did this, so our order goes from background to foreground. This is the backmost layer, then we have this on top of it. Then we have our white N, then we have our black outline for the middle, then we have a white outline for the middle, then we have a black N. All right, and what that will do is it will make it so that the white N and the black, these 2 are basically above, or behind, I should say, that. And we'll just put it like that, and we can see what the result is. So we can see that we wind up with this lovely bit where the white goes behind the black. Or the white of the N, I should say, goes behind the black, because it's behind it. It's behind both versions of it. See, this white is behind this black, and behind this white, and behind this black. So anywhere these 2, this bit, it's just that bit and this bit will appear on top. Wait a minute. Yes. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. It makes sense. If you put it together, it merges correctly. Oh yes, that's why, because we actually have it reversed. This should be here. This should be here. I got them reversed. There we go. That's the order it should be. So it would be white, then it would be white, and then it would be black and black. So that's why it layers the way it does. So we have the white in the far background, then these two white layers, then these two black layers. And when we merge it together and we look at it, because we can see A, A2, A3, A4, A5, and A6. There we go. Then we see it correctly and everything looks good. And that is how you get it so that the two blend together and that these things look like they merge together while not blending together with the other. Now, I can make it, if I wanted to, I have a variant of this. I will talk about it at another point, but I don't want to go too far into it today. But we can actually make this trail through at a darker, so sort of at a lighter value if we wanted it to. But we're not going to do that for right now. That's beyond the scope of this. We have a lot still to cover. So what's next? We need to, now that we've got this, we need to actually merge this. Well, all right. First of all, our biggest problem is, let me think about how to describe this. Our biggest problem right now is that we are not, we're looking at a square that is 512 by 512, because that's what our imported SVG is. And we want this to be HD resolution. So the logical thing that most people probably are thinking we're going to do, and you're partially right, is we're going to put in a solid, or actually we're going to put in a constant. So we're going to put in a constant here, and the constant, as we can see, if we put it in, the constant is not set to 512 because we have a source image, and Natron always defaults the project settings to the source image size. So what we really need to do is, just for the moment, I want to go back and just look at it this way. We're going to go and edit our source or project settings by hitting S, which pulls this up. And we're going to change our project format so that this is HD 1920 by 1080. All right. And when we do that, you can see that by doing that, it didn't change anything at this point. So you say to yourself, okay, well, why didn't it change it? Well, because we need to actually feed it. This is when it pays to feed the constant afterwards. And by doing that, then we wind up, it resizes our entire image, and we wind up with what our final version is going to look like. All right. So that's what we use to get our thing. And we could actually at this point just say we want to crop it to the B input, and this doesn't need anything for color behind it. There is no mask. All right, so there we go. That's what we've got so far. Next up, the next thing we need to do is we need to evaluate the alpha channel. I want to fix this right now. We need to get rid of this black. These black bits. I want this to be a complete laser, so I can put this over any color I want and have this be completely transparent. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to put a shuffle node in here. And so this first shuffle node, all we're going to do is tell it that the alpha, which if we go to our alpha right now, if we're hovering over our viewport and we hit A, we look at the alpha, we can see it's solid. We're going to set it to be the same as our input B, or our red channel for it, which is, they're all black and white. But as we can see, suddenly that makes the entire image transparent. Including all the bits are transparent. So now we can see that all our cutouts and everything are completely transparent. So now we know, no matter what we do, when we do alpha channels and so forth, this will look good and look like we want it to. So that's important. That's how we go about getting that. So what's the next thing we need to do? Well, the next thing we need to do is we need to do a modulate on this. And this is going to be a bit weird. So modulate's a funky little, here, let's look at it. I don't know if we've looked at modulate before. It's in the extras. I believe it is a color modulate. Yes, there we go. Color modulate. Modulate's one of the few things that actually gives us a 100% brightness control, which can be useful. The reason it's useful is because we can actually drive this above 100 and we can drive it down below 100. And for whatever reason, this is not... Oh, we're looking at the alpha. That's why. There we go. It's like, that's not right. So here we go. We're looking at it at 100, and we'll notice that when I push this up past 100, it got brighter. Do you see that? It gets brighter. And that's important. There's actually something going on here. The Modulate actually trims in a little bit. It doesn't do a perfect clipping of or brightness of the entire channel. It actually takes the alpha channel into account when it does it. So we actually wind up with a little bit of almost like an inset, almost like we did in a Rode Smooth by default. But in the process, we also get the ability to control the brightness, which we also could control the saturation and hue, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. We're going to handle that in a different way, simply because what we're going to do here for this is we're actually going to put an expression on this. All right. And I'm not going to get into the details of this expression. I'm just going to copy this expression, and I'll try to explain what this does to a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to cycle this. We're going to create basically some form of randomized pattern. All right. And so what we're going to do is here, we're going to go into we're going to set this expression, and I'm going to paste in this. And I recommend for people not watching the live stream, pause the video here, watch look at this, and copy these values down. Basically what I'm doing is I'm doing a sine wave, cosine with various values in it to create the equivalent of an FBM motion. All right. And I'm going to show you what this is going to do in a minute. This will make everything sort of the brightness vary up and down. It'll go above 100 and below 100. And then you can see that then I multiply it times 20, and then I add 100 to it because I want my base to be 100, and then I want it to be multiplied. I want the variance to be between 100 plus 20 and 100 minus 20. So when we do our sines, when we do work with sine, it works in a value between 0 and 1, or I should say from between -1 and 1. Excuse me. So it goes either above 1 or above 0 up to 1, or down below 0 by -1, or in some variant between. And so these are all going to add together. We're going to add various sine waves, and we're going to look at, as I said, we're going to look at it in this minute. And then what we're going to do is, because it's a value between 0 and 1, what we need to do is we need to increase that range. We want that to be bigger because this brightness control starts off at 100. We want to vary it by 20 units above and 20 units, or actually, I think it's actually 10 units. Well, we want to give ourselves a 20 unit variable. So we're going to basically multiply everything by, no, it's going to give us a 40 unit variable. Excuse me. Right. 20 above, 20 below. So, all right. So that's going to, so it can flicker brighter 20% and lower by 20%. All right. That's basically what it's going to do. And then because our default is 100, that's our starting value of the brightness of it to get it so that it's visible at its normal state, we have to add 100 to that, because remember, the sine waves are going to end up, the dead center is going to be 0. Well, we want the dead center to be at 100% brightness. We want it to get brighter by 20% and darker by 20. And that's why we add 20 to it. So we multiply the sine wave times 20, and then we add 100. All right. That does an offset. All right. So we do that. And now we're going to look at, if we look at our curve for the brightness, let's try and fit that in here. Come on. There it is. This is what the pattern it creates is. And we can see it just looks like random, sort of random noise, but it's not random noise. It's random movement of that control. And so that's going to make it basically flicker. And you can actually, if you went through and you adjust those values that I did the multiplication on to this, it would change where these peaks are. But what I was after was something that looked like some form of FBM noise. So that there was constant variation and it wasn't consistent, and it looked like it looks like noise, and that's what we've got. All right, but it's not really noise. It's controlled. It's actually a bunch of sine waves that are in cosines that are all merged. All right, so that's going to make this brighten and darken. We're not really going to see it very much at this point because, well, and also this is going to take too long to render. I don't want to go through this too much. All right, we're going to skip that because we're not going to look at that because we got a lot to go through. We now need to color this. We have now given it value, but we want to give it a color. So the way we go about coloring this is because we're dealing with alpha, and I almost always deal with things this way. I like working with black and white and then giving color afterwards. And because we're varying, by the way, this is, yes, yes, we are going to be varying it on this alpha channel. Let me just think about that. Is that wise? That is fine. We're not going to worry about it because we're going to be merging in the original tube shape. This is mainly going to be for glowing purposes. All right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to put a merge node. All right, so we had merge. We're going to take and add a solid here as well. Solid. All right, so this solid is going to go into the A input of the merge node. Why? Because, well, we can see when we put it over it, it just causes our image to disappear altogether. Let's get out nice and far so that we're sure. Let's look. See, we can see it here. Let's get zoomed in. There we go. What we're going to do is change this to a color. Let's then change it to blue. We're going to just make it solid blue. That's what our solid's going to look like. And then we're going to change this, and we're going to say that we want to multiply this times basically our alpha channel, which is our previous thing. So we're going to say that what's coming out of that modulate is going to be our alpha. We're going to just tell it that we're going to multiply this times it. There we go. And this is what we wind up with. And this is now, because everything is increasing and decreasing, this is actually going to start giving us, we might start seeing a little bit of the value here. It's not going to show up super duper bright now, but this is actually much brighter than it would have been without the modulate. Let's turn off the modulate. We can see when I enable and disable the modulate, you can see that it just gets a little bit thinner. And this will become apparent what this is going to do, hopefully, the second we do the next step, which is the glow. So we're going to do a glow. Okay, so we've turned this blue. I just want to make sure something. Yes, no, that's right. We want the glow. All right, so we're at the glow. Sorry. So what? All right. So the first thing we need to do is we want to make it so that more blue is a very, very dull color. So in the IRE scale, blue is very low. So we need to. It's not going to glow by default. We need to increase the sensitivity of what is going to glow by reducing the isolate highlights. So we're going to set this to 0.01, which is going to make pretty much everything glow, or it should. Oh, yes, we haven't made it actually glow yet. We need to give it one. I want to make sure I'm right. What we're going to do is set the gain to 8. There we go. We can start seeing it glow. We're going to set the gamma to 1.05. This is actually going to dullen down, I believe the gamma will dullen down the blue a little bit. So put after the 0, we're going to just put a 5. And we're also going to take down the saturation to 0.25. And that will also dullen down. So we're getting this. This is, we've gone from beforehand we had this. Let's see if we can see a difference. Before is this, and after should, no, here. You know what? I'm just going to disable this. So disable, enable. We seeing it? There we go. There's the blue. We can see just a little bit of a blue glow happening. Now it's not very intense at this point. We're going to actually increase that in, we're going to fix this. Actually, there's a couple more things we need to do to this glow before we're done. Well, we need to change this so that it's screening. We're going to change it so that it adds. And you can see when we do the add, it starts emphasizing that little bit of the center point because of the erode. And then we want to also expand the ROD so that when this is close to the edges, that the glow will not get cut off at the edge of the screen. And we also want to keep it applying on the alpha as well. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow the glow to apply to the alpha channel. All right. So let's look at the glow on the alpha channel. There we go. Let's look at it before, without it applied, and when it's applied. Okay. We want the glow on the alpha channel. All right. That's going to really help sell this effect. So then what we need to do is we need to increase the colors. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a color correct. So we're going to select this glow node, and we're going to hit C to add a color correct. And for our color correct, what we're going to do is we're just going to set the gain to 6. So we're going to just drag this up till it's 6. And you can see that that really intensifies. So I just want to point out that we're getting a very similar, almost neon effect that we got before. And I want to point out that 90%, you can see it right here, how it's sort of dark blue here and light blue here. A lot of that is actually coming from this modulate. Well, all right. A lot of it's coming from the modulate. It just helps emphasize that a little bit more than it did before. And it will look more... Well, it'll look better when it's all done. The modulate's going to make this whole thing brighten and darken. We're happen to be looking at a very bright point. It will make it more visible. Anyway, we need to, at this point, the big problem we have... let me see. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I did something wrong. I skipped a step. I did a color correct before. We have one step before this. We need to add noise. We need to particleize this. We need to put a merge node here. And we're going to merge this. We're going to take our glow, put it like that. And we're going to put a SE. We're going to put an SE noise over here. And this SE noise is going to be connected to our constant as its background. Okay. And then we're going to put that into the B input here. Okay. So that sets it as the background. All right. So you're saying to yourself, what in the heck are we doing here? Why are we doing this? The reason is what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to tell this that we want this to be in it. But the first thing we need to do is we need to actually make this look like little points of light. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to change this SE noise from, we're going to change it from an FBM to a noise, to a straight noise, because we don't need to use FBM. FBM is very FBM adds a lot of render time, so whereas noise is very similar. And for our purposes, we're going to be shrinking our noise size down to down to 2, not 0.2, to 2, so we can see it here. So this is what our noise is going to be. This is what's going to create that disturbed light. And the next thing we're going to do, let me just see, we are also going to be changing this. We want to animate this over time. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to put another expression here. I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to copy the expression I have, and I'm going to go into our Z slope, and I'm going to set an expression here. And I'm going to just, for the Z slope, so the Z slope is how much it has moved, how much it is, excuse me, not the Z slope, the Z0. Sorry, let me make sure. Yes, Z0. I want to make sure I'm doing the Z0, not the Z slope. Z0. I'm going to set an expression to the Z0, and we're going to just we're going to put a random 11. All right. And the reason we're doing that is we want a random result, a random number somewhere between 0 and 11. And that is going to just give us some random particle or random blitz. It's going to make basically noisy patterns. All right. So we're going to hit OK. And that's just going to cause this every time we change a frame, we'll see that the noise pattern behind it changes. Now we could use other techniques to do this, but we just need we want a simple black and white noise. And this happens to be a simple black and white noise. It's very quick. So, but it is not currently affecting our light, or our laser. We want this to affect our laser, and the way it's going to affect our laser is we're going to simply tell it that we want the merge node, instead of being over, we want to tell it that remember the SeNoise is coming in the B. We want the glow to appear inside the SeNoise. So we're going to say change it from over to in, and now we can see that we get these little bitty particle bits, and this creates the effect that there are little laser beam specks and so forth. So now when we go down to our color correct and we look at this, we can start seeing this random pattern, and it looks all broken up like it's laser bits, like this scattering happening of light. All right. So then what we're going to do is we're going to be taking this SeNoise that we've applied, because the problem is that our glow doesn't really show up very well here. So we're going to actually do another merge. We're going to merge over this SeNoise again. So we're going to go like this. And what we're going to do here is, instead of doing an over, we're going to tell it that we want this to be, I believe it was color dodge. That's what it was. Color dodge. There we go. So now it just dodges it, but it's doing it too much. This is too heavy-handed. So we need to drop this down. Otherwise, we're going to just see all these really harsh particles, and it's going to look really bad. So we're going to set this down to 0.25, and that just draws it back a bit. But we can see that before this, it's just too dark, and with it, it gets a little bit brighter, so it's a little more noticeable. All right? And that will just make it read more like it's actual light coming off of this thing, and it'll help enhance that glow. All right, so now what we need, I want to, we're at the point where we have this. If we were to play this at this point, you know what? Let's just play this a little bit. We're going to hit this, and we're going to just shrink this down. What I'm doing is I'm doing a view box so that all that renders is this little bit inside of this, and we're just going to look at this for a little while so that this will hopefully render faster. Actually, you know what? We might just look at it, just a section of this. All right, so that way we can look at this at 100%. And, oops, I said 100%. There we go. And if we hit play on this, hopefully this will render pretty quickly, and we might see, yeah, we can see that the particles are moving. So you can see we get a little bit of that flicker going on. All right, so that creates the flicker of the actual tube noise, or of the laser noise and the laser lines. And this is how we create the actual laser line look. All right, it's up to this point. But, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I had the wrong thing. It's going to just take a minute, because now it has to calculate out the entire glow. All right, so there we go. So now what we need to do is we need to actually start, we need to add our grunge to this. So we need to add an SeNoise over here. And we're going to, again, connect this up to our constant. Let's just drag this out like so. And I just want to make sure I've got this. We're going to take this SeNoise. Let's take a look at this. And we're going to set this SeNoise. Oops, this SeNoise. Let me get the right one. I want to set this so that we're going to set the noise size to 100. Okay, let's zoom out and look at it. We're going to keep it in FBM. We're going to set our Z0 to 5. We're going to set our Z slope to 4. And then what we're going to do is, because we don't need this grunge to be super duper detailed, we're going to actually change our octaves to 2 and our lacunarity to 3, which is going to, it's going to make it look a little bit, the lacunarity will add a little bit more to it, but this will render faster than a 6x2. Anyway, now we're going to take the gain. We're going to set the gain to 1, which should darken it. It should add a bit more contrast to the overall thing. Unfortunately, we can't keep going up with the gain. So now what we have to do is we actually have to use a grade node to get this further. So we're going to push this a little bit further. And let me pull up the grade. What we're going to do for the grade node is we're going to set the black point to 0.76. All right. So that's going to set the black point. What that does is it sets the low point for the black. Then we're going to set the white point to 0.86. Oh, no, 68. 886. Right. And then what that's going to do is, as we can see, it basically makes it into little splotches like that. And we're going to drop this down -1.4. So we're going to take the lift down -1.4. So it's like that. So we get these little grunge bits. Let's see. I'm going to set the gain to 3.1. which is going to increase the gain a little bit, and we're going to set the offset to -7, which is going to bring it back down into play. Now, this is just how I got it to where I was. I just liked how those particular settings, I like what it gave us for a randomized grunge look here. This is just the settings I used. You don't have to use these. You can change your grunge to whatever you want it to be. User preference. Now, we do need to, however, clamp this because we have multiplied this. We have offset this. We've done set the gain to 3. We want to clamp this. So we're going to do a clamp here. Clamp. And we don't need to do more than just put a clamp on it. All right. And we'll put the clamp in like so. I just want to make sure that... Sorry. There we go. So that's clamped. Then we need to take this, and what we're going to do is we're going to... Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold the phone. Something looks weird to me. That does not look right. That should not have been clamped like that. Something's wrong. I think I added a clamp. Oh, I think I clamped the actual grade node. No? Uh-oh. Oh, phew. I've got something that's not right. I gotta look and figure out why. What did I do different? Oh, it's because we had this unpremultiplied. Uncheck unpremultiplied on our clamp node, because otherwise, if it pre-multiplies it, we wind up with this. We don't want it to do that. What we want is this to be the thing that's passed through. All right. And we also, I want to make sure that grade is applying to the alpha channel. Oh, it wasn't. Oh, well, we're not going to worry too much. Well, that's all right. It's fine. So we're going to go back here. All right. So what are we going to do here? We're going to take and we're going to merge this, and we're going to take what we just created, and that is going to go into the A input on top of it, and then we're going to say we're going to multiply that. Just hit multiply, and what that's going to do is, as we can see, or may not be able to see, we can see that it's dark. It's created dark specks in our values. So if we look, for example, right here, we'll see a dark speck when we switch it over to the afterwards. Ready? Watch right in this area. Hold on, wait. Oh, right here. Here we go. Right there. That spot right there. Watch where the mouse is. If we disable this, we can see darker. So that's the type of grunge. Basically, this darkening grunge is going to flicker a lot like before. And, you know, I'm just curious. I think I made a boo-boo when I rebuilt this today. I think I want to just try something here. This may not... Oh, no. Nope. Don't want to do that. Never mind. We're going to keep it just like this. It worked fine. We already saw what it will look like, or basically will look like. All right, so this gets us our final animation up to this point. What we need to do at this point is we need to, this is basically too dark or too light. If we go back in time, let's fit this. We can see that this is very light off to the side. And I want this to look like it's old. And to make it look old, what we need to do is we need to put some form of vignette around this. And so a vignette is a darkening. And so what we're going to do for a vignette is simply use a radial. So we're going to type in ray or RAD, radial. There we go. And we're going to take our radial, and I think I just connected it in. You know what? We'll just zoom out a little bit here. We're going to connect the radial in up here at the top out of our constant, just like so. Let's have it come out like this. And we'll bring that down. So it's like that. Okay. So that's our radial is coming down like that. It's being fed our original constant to set the initial size. For our radial, what we're going to do is we're going to set this to smaller. I really want to eat in on this. All right, let's take a look at what we're going to do. We're going to do another merge node. We're going to take the A input and connect it to this, and we're going to tell it that we're going to multiply. And when we multiply this, what it's going to do is where it's light, we're going to get the laser through, and where it's dark, it's going to basically eat away, or it's going to vignette. And so what we're going to do, just set this to multiply. And what's going to happen on the edge is we see we've lost everything on the edge. Well, I don't want to lose everything on the edge. And also, I want this to be a little more intense when it gets to the center at the end. So we're going to probably shrink this radial down a bit. But for right now, let's try and restore the edge detail a little bit so that we can see that end that disappeared over here. So what we're going to do for our multiply here is we're going to set this to 0.8. So when we set it to 8, basically 0.8, it allows 20% of this to come through on the edge. So just so you can see that it's not perfect, let's see. We'll disable this. We can see where, 20% of it is coming through. So it's darker, but it's not super dark. And believe it or not, 20% is actually in linear space is a lot. That's almost half of its value. So it's only dimmed it down by about half. All right, so that takes care of that. But when we get out here to the end where we have this, the problem is that this is looking too bright at the top and the bottom. I really want that vignette to show up on this part as well. So if we look at our original radial, or actually, you know what, we can just go back here and we can set this. Let's change our blend mode temporarily from this to, let's do difference or something. That should, that didn't work very well. How about minus? There we go. We can see that it is, by doing minus, we can at least see this. We're seeing that it's not quite coming down far enough. It's just too bright in this area to actually affect it, especially considering we've dimmed it to only 80% of its brightness. So by the time we've gotten to this point, it's probably too bright. So we need to shrink this down. So we're going to change this. We're going to change the size of this radial. And I'll get the dimensions here. We're going to change this from 1920 by 1080. I want us to visually see this when we change this. We're going to change this to 1344, so 1344 by 576. All right. Whoops. Wait a minute. Not 176, 576. There we go. All right, so that's what our thing is looking like. But as we can see, it's not centered. So we need to center this. So we click center and then it centers it. And now we can see that it's going to eat in at the top. We can actually see it eating in here. All right. So it's now if we shift this from minus back to multiply, we can see that that indeed now darkens the top and the bottom of our logo when it's actually in its final position. Let's just look at it before and after. This is before, this is after. We can see the darkening that's happening, and that just helps sell this idea that this is an inconsistent thing that's dull towards the sides. Now the reason that it's stretched out like it is on that is because this is we are doing this to 1920 by 1080, and I want it to look like this is actually sort of kind of like it's rear projected, because that's how in older days when they film these things well, when they film these things and then project it, they used to project it through viewing screens, and a lot of times at the times the light bulbs weren't these big huge fluorescents that you could put wherever. So a lot of times they used just a standard bulb in the early days. So we're trying to mimic that kind of feel, so that there's a bit of it soft or darkens vignettes as it gets to the side. All right, there's one more thing we need to do, which is to make this whole thing shake. And the way we're going to do the shake is we're going to actually use the community plugin, which we've used before. We're going to just hit tab, shaker, and we're going to select shaker. That made me nervous. I was worried that this was going to crash on us. All right. You know, this makes me think I want to save this file, save project. Let's just save this so I don't have to recreate this. We're going to just call this, I'm going to just call this old laser logo, and we're going to change this to live as opposed to reference. I'm going to hit save. And wait till Natron finishes. It's just going to think for a minute. There we go. Old laser live. There we go. We have our first save. We should probably have saved this before now, but better late than never. And by the way, if you want to speed this up anything, you can always switch some of these nodes, especially the grunge bits, to shader tool based GLSL noise patterns. And there is I actually did a version of this at one point using GLSL, and it rendered faster, but the problem we run into the standard thing, whereas if it doesn't initiate correctly, it can create issues. Anyway, let's see our shaker settings. We want to, first of all, we don't want to do any rotational. We don't want this to twist as it's going. So we want to reduce this. So we're going to get rid of that, zero that out, and we're going to zero out the rotational frequency. Then we're going to take the translation amplitude, and we're going to shrink it down. Instead of, we don't want it to move 50 pixels in every direction. We only want this to move about 2 pixels. And you can see it just shifted 2 pixels. And then we want to change the translation frequency. We want to increase the frequency. So we want to bring this up. I believe higher is better. So we set it to 25, and that should cause it to shift around a bit more, a bit quicker. All right. And so that should be, oh, there's one more thing. Now we've made this all alpha. This has an alpha channel. We can see it here. Oh, wait a minute, did I missed a piece. I missed a piece in here. I missed a piece. It's a small piece. It's just oh yes, it's right after the color correction. All right, so right after the color correction, we want to do one more merge, because our alpha channel, this is what our alpha channel currently looks like, which looks like a hazy blob of nothingness. This does not match our thing. We don't have tubes. We want to have our neon tubes here. And we can see that our alpha channel has been butchered to crud because of all the SeNoises and the glows and everything that we've applied to this. So we want to fix this so that it looks more like this. And the way we're going to do that is back here, right after our color correct, if we go to our alpha channel, we're gonna put a merge node here, okay? And that's gonna knock these down just a little bit, but that's not a big deal. We'll just pull those down, pull that down, so there's room for this. There we go. And what we're going to do here, let me make sure, I want to make sure that I'm at the right location. Right, it is here. We want this so that the original source that's coming into that our image is coming in on A, and the A for the B input, we want to actually put a dot node out here and connect the B here. And then we're going to take this all the way up and connect it to our shuffle node right here, the original shuffle node. All right. So you're saying to yourself, well, why did we do that? Well, because the shuffle node back here, we have this as our pure alpha right here. We want this pure alpha before, I believe it, I just want to make sure, yes. We want the pure alpha before it gets all that extra stuff in there. We want the tube outlines. And we want to bring it in here. Now, so what that does is it basically turns the alpha to look like this. However, we have a problem here. As soon as we do that, if we go back to our color channels, we can see that it's suddenly overblown this. Let's turn this, disable this. And, oh yes, well, we can't actually disable it if we bypass it. So we'll put that over there like so. Oh, we're not looking at it. All right, we're going to look at it down here. This is what it looks like before we add it, and then this is what it looks like after. And you can see it's brightened it up too much. And so what we want to do here is on this particular merge node right here between the color correct, this is where we're bringing in the alpha. We want to just disable the B channels R, G, and B. So we're just going to disable those. So all that's coming in is the alpha channel. And that way all we're doing is merging in the alpha. And that will give our alpha that original, those original tubes in there. And you can see the tubes are there. It's just this is dimmed and darkened because of the other bits. So there we go. That should, if everything worked, let me make sure that this is working correct. I want to make sure that our alpha is indeed transferring. Yes, this doesn't alter the alpha. Good. Sometimes you never know. All right, so there's our alpha. All right, so this would make it so we could composite this. It's going to change a bit if we were to composite this over some other background. So we might have to go into dealing with that. But for right now, we're gonna leave this at this point. But if we were to render this out, because we're dealing with an alpha-based background and it's not merging over anything, we are going to have a problem. So what we really need to do in order to render this out and have it look like we did in the final project, we need to make it so that this alpha channel is not actually applying to the output, because it will get taken into account when it renders out a JPEG. Let me just get back to our shake, excuse me. So what we need to do down here is we want to put one more merge node here, and we're going to just put a solid here. So we're going to do just before or just after our shake, we're going to hit tab off to the side. We're going to put a solid, and we're going to merge that solid, hit M to merge it, put the original into the A channel, and we're going to put it like that. And what that's going to do is, it's because the solid is black, it's going to give it a white alpha channel. Excuse me. A white alpha channel or solid alpha channel. So this would act basically as a background. Now, I'm just so that people are aware that this is not perfect and that we really can't change this at this point. Let's change this just to show that this doesn't work perfectly. We can see that it's very bright. It doesn't, we have to do more to make this stand out properly on a colored background like yellow. Basically, because we're dealing with light, we have to adjust this based off of what our backgrounds are. So while this does alpha channel over things, and we can use this on top of things, it was designed in its current state to work on black. mostly for this particular effect. We will in the future go over how to fix this in another episode. I just don't want to make this too much longer because this has been a long enough episode. So for right now, we're just going to be focusing on keeping this black. Trust me, we'll be doing more with this in the future. And the end result of this at this point, if you were to put a write node at this point and write this out to a file, we would wind up with basically something that looks very similar. Might not be exactly the same as what our original reference, because that was done a long time back. This is taking a while to render. I'm hoping, there we go. If we were to render this out, we would wind up with something that looks like our today's goal, which is this. All right, so there we have it. That's how we do that laser-like effect. I know there was a lot to it, a lot to process. Hopefully everybody got it. If you missed anything, you can always pop back and watch the watch this on YouTube, pause it, or pause the Facebook stream or Facebook video in its archive form, easier on YouTube. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Keep on Natroning.